Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new edition of Newsmakers. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Thursday, April 25th, doing a day early this week so we can get up to that big Fresno Grizzlies game this weekend. I'm delighted to welcome back my pals, Josh Molina of Newshawk and Nick Welsh of the Santa Barbara Independent. And we got a lot to dive into this week, so let's get to it. Nick, that big project at La Cumbra, which is going to go in the Macy's site, which of course we didn't want to have a general proposal, general plan for, is looking shadier and shadier. I mean, they can't even agree on how much affordable housing there's supposed to be. They had there was a hearing. They didn't send out any notices of it. What's going on there?
You know, I don't know if it's shady or just the left hand and the right hand not talking to each other and certainly not working well together. This is the proposal for the Cumbra Plaza for people who are just tuning in. They're going to build 642 units of rental housing there. It's going to be 76 feet off the ground, which the current height limit is 45. And so it is, the worst thing you can do is give people what they say they want. What we say we want is affordable or rental housing. They're giving us 642 units of it, and that's great. The question is, of that, how much is affordable? And for both Josh and me, the big thing that jumped out and bit us on the behinds was, up to now, the number we've been hearing as written in stone was 54, which seems, I think Sheila Lodge described it as being pitiful. And at the meeting, it was the Planning Commission last Thursday, for the first time, we heard the city say, no, that's 81 units. And really what was striking about how that number came out wasn't that in the staff presentation, where the basic facts of the proposal are laid out there, that would have been the sort of thing you would have expected. You had to have Planning Commissioner Leslie Wiscombe give the city planner, who is a contract planner, not even a regular staff person, really much the third degree to say, let's do the math. And the math, again, if anybody can follow the math, you're doing better than me. Why it's 81 in one scenario and why it's 54 in another. But clearly what the community wants in a big way, and what every planning commissioner, all 7, said most emphatically, is you're not there yet. We need you to do better. We know you can do better. We know you will do better. And we need more affordable units. And it was sort of an interesting kabuki theater where you have the city of Santa Barbara saying, no, it is 81, absolutely. And then you have Brian Cornell, the architect for the developer, and Matthew Taylor, one of the developers. They did not contradict it. They didn't argue it. They just smiled and said, we're still working it out. So they minimized the point of conflict with that sweet smile that they both have. We're just working it out. But it's very clearly, this is a fundamental difference. It's a significant difference.
Yeah. So, Josh, how did this happen? Because I know we've talked on the show about how 54 was way below the minimum. I mean, and we're paying someone as a consultant to figure this out, and they had to have Wiscombe explain it to them.
It was a 4-hour and 50-minute meeting, and they're disputing state bonus density law and what and how many number of units this means. So according to the city's calculation, right, they're saying it should be 81, it should be 54 plus 27. And the developers are like, well, we think it's 54 based off of the way we do the math, which I guess has to do with the original amount of density, not factoring in the amount of additional units they're going to get if they build housing. So it is circular, But 54, 81, this is 652 total units. I don't think 81 is really going to pacify a lot of the people who have concerns about this project. You know, Brian Cornell sent me an email, and I like Brian, and I think he likes me. You know, he's an old school architect, but he's like, "Gee, Josh, I didn't know that you know, I'm surprised you missed all the positive comments that were made at the meeting." In your
Well, that's because they only invited supporters, didn't they?
you know, and that was another thing was, I don't know how Nick, you know, found out about it. You know, it is right there on the planning commission agenda, but you know, I didn't really notice it until the weekend when I'm like, whoa, let me check all the stuff I missed this week. And it was like, there's La Cumbre Plaza, you know, and it didn't even have La Cumbre Plaza on there. It was just sort of like the address for like Hope. And so it was kind of not really that advertised. And
It
it
wasn't
was there if you
advertised
look
at
for it.
all.
It was there if you looked for it. But yeah, there was this standoff between one of the planning commissioners and Valerie Cantella, who is doing the new contracted PR. And she just said right there, yeah, we only notified people who checked an online box that says we support the project. And the planning commissioner said, wait a minute, I checked a box, but I didn't check that I supported it. Does this mean all these other people did not get notified? And Valerie, who used to be the PR person for the city of Goleta, she's a very nice person, you know, good at her job. She just kind of said, yeah, we didn't notify those people. We will eventually notify everyone after we get through ABR and Planning Commission. But it was kind of how you had only 6 people talking, 3 people in public and 3 online. The project is huge, it's big, it's controversial. Matthew Taylor is he's a nice guy, local guy. They know they're trying to like get through this with as little housing as possible, with a lot of smiles on their face, with Brian Cornell leading the charge. And as Nick said, Tava Ostringer, Leslie Wiscombe, they made it very clear. It's 81 units at a minimum.
Yeah.
And I think there's stuff going on behind the scenes, you know, where they try to get the Taylors to submit to this Chamber of Commerce deal where they're securing big chunks of housing for local employees at some sort of dialed in rate. You know, I think we're going to see more, but I think to rely on the developer to get people to show up is not realistic, is not reasonable. I mean, we get press releases from City Hall about getting birds out of trees, or, you know, the Parks and Rec Commission meetings to alert us to things that we would know if we were looking at our agendas. Now, I mean, this one is on me. I was in the dentist's office last Thursday. I could not be there. And, you know, and I totally spaced on it, right? So I knew it and I forgot about it. And then I saw Josh's story and I said, holy shit, now I have to watch this meeting. And this is a big deal meeting. And again, what media in Santa Barbara is there for the city to reach out to? But there are some of us, it's not that hard.
Yeah, there's
Hey,
not
by
that
the
many
way,
of us.
this
Yeah.
is a big deal. But I think that there is a lack of cooperation between the city and the developers as to who's on first. And I think this was an after you, Alphonse moment.
Yeah. Well, I gotta say, you know, I mean, once again, this, I think, points up the fundamental flaw in this whole statewide building program, which is, yeah, we're gonna have all kinds of rental housing, but nobody's gonna be able to afford it. It's gonna drive prices up. And the whole thing is just a scam for developers, in my opinion, but be that as
Well,
it.
that came up at the meeting. I think Sheila Lodge, former mayor, planning commission, and Brian Barnwell, former planning commissioner and city council member, both said, hey, this whole idea of affordability by design. So if you make it small, it will be affordable. And they said, well, you don't have to look very far. There's the Marsh, which is just a block away, which is the first AUG high density housing units the city got built. Rents there what
$4,000 or something.
you know, 3,500 to $4,000 for a 1-bedroom. So hardly that affordable by design. And I think there's this sort of magical thinking that at a certain point, if you build enough, supply and demands will kick in. And the question is, how much do you have to build, given how much we haven't been building? I mean, we didn't have rental housing built in this city for what, 45 years. I mean, so all of a sudden we're having it. There's a lot of pent up demand.
Yeah, there's a lot of pent up demand, and there's also a lot of people that would like to move to Santa Barbara, and maybe they're young couples with two incomes, and they
Yeah.
can afford to come here and drive out all the people on the west side too. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. All right, we got this other even bigger issue out in Goleta, near Goleta Valley Hospital. Josh, is it called the Orchard Project, or it's just in an orchard, or what's the
I guess both.
huge deal? That's a huge deal out there.
Yeah, Jason and Jeff Nelson, father and son planning team, are behind a project owned by the Georgie family to build 1,200 units right out there by Highway 217 near Cottage Hospital on the edge of Old Town Goleta. And essentially, critics say you're building an entirely new city. Essentially, it's like this. It's not a neighborhood. You know, if it's 1,200 units, you can quadruple the amount of people who are going to be living there. And so this is a huge thing. There's lemon orchards there. There's avocado groves, and they would remove all of that and build all kinds of different types of housing, from studios and apartments to some single family to some work, live kind of loft situations. And so the thing about this was that the County Planning Commission did not recommend that it be rezoned
Yeah,
for
that's
housing.
really that's the important wrinkle here, isn't it, Josh? I mean, that's
Yeah. And so all these housing projects, we know about all the pushback the county got for only proposing ag land for housing. And then Laura Capps came in and said, why don't we look at county properties? So there was a little bit of look at that. And now the Planning Commission says, no, this is Laura Capps's district, Santa Barbara 2nd District Supervisor. And there's lots of controversy on this project. One, people feel like it's going to gentrify Old Town Goleta, because just on the other side of Highway 217, you have, the working class community of Goleta, and you're going to build this other neighborhood right across. It's going to be brand new with all these services. They're going to have a market there, and it's going to be sort of like the tale of two cities with Highway 217 in the middle. So there are those people in Goleta who don't like that. There are others who are like, this is way too much housing. We can't do this and pave over this ag land. The pro side of it, however, is, it's not Glen Annie. It's not over there by DP. We're not going to have thousands of people getting off on Stork and Glen Annie at a highway off ramp that's already impacted. We're on a Hollister corridor. We're near the hospital, bus stops, transit. So the side of it is saying this is a better spot for housing than over there in Glen Annie. So there will be some discussions on this when it goes to the Board of Supervisors. But I would just say, as a journalist, and then I'll shut up, but I really wish I would have written a big story on all 20 of these projects. But we just can't. I mean, it's too much. We're such a little small little journalism community now. But damn, the county planning, I mean, they've tried to pull off something here pretty incredible, where they've sort of captured this under this rezone process. But we're talking about thousands and thousands of individual units that is not getting the public scrutiny that it should.
Right, and we talk about them individually every week. I mean, you're right. If only there was something called Mission and State for which we could raise $1 million and then not hire some vanity press guy from LA to run it into the ground. But I
Let's just
digress.
go back to this project for a second. I mean, one of the interesting things about it is that they are offering, if I got it right, 40% of the units would be below market. And that's a whole gradation of, what is affordable. But 40%.
It's not 40%, is it? It's more like, isn't it more like 25%? I thought it was 400.
All he said, Ryan Cruz is doing the reporting. for us on that. And if maybe I'm misremembering, but I thought he said 40%.
I'm just looking at the numbers from Josh's story. He had 1,771 in the project and 444 with various.
Okay, so that's about, so 25% is about 15% more than any other developer will commit to. 10% is sort of the magic ceiling, and the Georgies are saying, no, we're going to do more than that. One of the reasons they can, I think, is that they've owned this land for 5 generations. And so their land costs are not as prohibitive as a lot of the other land costs for other developers. But it is sort of as Josh was saying, it's going to be a big chunk of ag land that is taken out of ag, but it is also the most urban infill ag you're going to find. And if you're going to convert ag, this would be the place to do it. You know, and then of course you have the gentrification issues of Old Town, and Old Town needs to be kept the way it is.
All right, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on it, but on this zoning thing, so it was originally one of the projects that the county sent to the state to said this is in our housing plan. They subsequently said, nah, never mind. Now the Georgies and their developers want the county to put it back in, and they're basically threatening if you don't, we're gonna go builder's remedy. Have I got that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And by going builder's remedy, they're dropping a couple hundred affordable units if this happens. So they're pressuring the county, and they're basically saying, you know, you're going to be in default of your housing element because you already told them this was going to be in the rezone. And so they're saying the county is going to need all of this housing, which is sort of the master stroke of the county. They separated the process. They said, we're gonna do this state, and then we're gonna rezone later. And by the way, this is all conspiracy theory. It's not actually conspiracy theory. It's all what doesn't matter now. But the reason they put this after the election, right, was because they didn't want these issues coming up when Doss Williams was going to be voting on it. But he ended up losing anyway, so it didn't matter. But that's another reason why they pushed off the rezones until after the election. So it's very complicated. It's not complicated. It's very unfortunate the way that they are doing these things, the county, and it's all sort of catching up to them.
They're stuck. I mean, they're kind of stuck now with what they.
But it will go from the planning commission to the board of supervisors. It will be appealed to the supervisors. So the supervisors are in a position to reverse the planning commission vote. There's only, I mean, yes, it was Doss Williams, but it was also, I think that the political concern was for Joan Hartman in the 3rd district, that some of these could be lose-lose votes for her. And at a time when people were initially worried she was going to fight a credible opponent, they were worried about it, and that may have affected the scheduling. Ultimately, she had no credible opponent, so it was all for naught.
All right. Let's switch to, let's talk a little homelessness. Nick, you have a very good summation of all the latest on this issue, which I recommend everybody go read. But I have to say, the headline gave me whiplash. Much progress made on homelessness, but problems still getting worse. Wait a minute. Isn't the definition of progress that things are getting better?
Hey, this is, yes, things are getting better and worse at the same time. I mean,
we're not getting better. There's
no, actually, Jerry,
more homeless people.
They don't, no, 1,400 people, 1,400 homeless people in the last year got into housing. That is a huge number. 14, typically a point in time count in Santa Barbara County for all of Santa Barbara County is about 1,400 to 1,800 people. So that is a huge number.
But let me just offer a couple other numbers. The county spent $112 million, which
no, it's not the county, it's all the government agents. Okay.
More homeless people. I mean, something's not working here.
No, Jerry, you're right. A lot of things aren't working here. If you're looking for a simple answer on homeless stuff, you're looking in the wrong place. They
No,
don't
wait a
exist.
minute, time out. The simple answer on homelessness, which all the conventional wisdom geniuses, including you, say is all we got to do is build some housing for them. That's not working. And I think that's being increasingly more and more discredited. It's the nonprofit homeless industrial complex that is pushing that solution.
Jerry,
But it ain't working.
Jerry, you need to stop listening to right-wing radio.
Oh.
I mean, what they were
You need
talking
to
about.
stop listening to
Okay.
these
If-
nonprofit lefties. Jeez.
The reality is, when you live in a housing market like Santa Barbara, it doesn't take much to push somebody over the edge. And it's not just Santa Barbara, and it's not just the homeless industrial complex. Santa Barbara County accomplished more last year, and they were overwhelmed more than they ever have been by the number of new people coming. So we've seen 1,000 in the last 2 years. The number of people who are seeking homeless services has increased by 1,000. And about 50% of those people are.
You said
First
about
time.
2,000 in your story.
But it increased by 1,000, but it increased up to 4,000. 50% of those people are first-time homeless. You know, and what are we seeing? We're seeing a big growth in older people living in their cars. We're seeing a big bump in families living in their cars. So the county just got an $8 million grant along with the city of Santa Barbara to deal with people living in their cars.
Well, here's the other problem I have, and you know, we look terrific by comparison to the state.
We do.
So in the last 5 years, the state of California spent $24 billion, and we've gone from 151,000 homeless people to 181,000. So my calculation, Nick, is that if we only do this for 5 more years, we'll have 500,000 homeless people. That's working out real well too. Plus, the audit shows they have no idea whether it's working or half these programs are working or not.
You're right.
There's
That
no
was
data even being collected.
Right. No, remember the unemployment insurance scandal where there's a lot of massive systems that the state has put together to distribute money to people in need, where they have really terrible auditing and people are getting money that they shouldn't be getting, or we don't know who's getting the money and we don't know what difference it's making.
Yeah.
The
best line.
And while people like you, and I understand, you can get all like, oh, the sky's falling, oh my God. And your hair.
Oh, they're just pissing money away. That's what I'm
But here's the thing. If you've ever gone out doing a homeless count, or you've ever really dealt with homeless people, and you see that these aren't widgets, and there isn't a nice, tidy pathway, and everything is super complicated, who expects a bookkeeping system that's capable of a meaningful audit, as necessary as that is also exceptionally difficult.
No, I'm just talking about the eye test, which is what Lavanino and Bob Nelson were both talking about. Is, you know what? You can say you're making all this progress that you want, but as long as people are seeing encampments, there's these huge encampments, you're not going to convince. I mean, it's like Joe Biden goes out, you pay $12 for eggs, and Biden says, yes, but we've got the second lowest inflation rate after Thanksgiving in the last. But nobody cares.
No.
People care about what their experience is.
I know. What do you believe? Me or your lying eyes? The old joke.
Yes. Exactly.
And the problem is that the progress is invisible. The lack of progress is right in your face. So let's just boil down Steve Lavanino's comments. He was talking about the homeless encampments in the Santa Maria River. And he was talking about how there's windows there, there's doors, there's even a mayor. They have a mayor. And he was going on, he goes, as long as people see that, it doesn't matter what we do. He's right, but guess what? All those people are in San Luis Obispo County. They are not under the Santa Barbara. They all are governed, regulated, helped, etc. in San Luis. So we are being held accountable by the reality of San Luis Obispo.
All right.
The problem with homelessness is that you're just screwed. It's just
There's our headline for tomorrow. Okay, we got that one going. All right. Speaking of public policy things that don't work, Josh, we're raising parking rates again. I see. I wonder why there aren't more cars downtown. What?
I'm so happy for this story because I covered the budget hearing and it's just the release of the budget. And typically these things are pretty boring. It says, here's what our budget is, overview, the calendar where everything's going to be hashed out in meetings. But Keith DeMartini, right, just like publicly says in the meeting
A
that
fan of the show.
a fan of the show, yes. Well, that's why I'm glad I said his name. The very esteemed Keith DeMartini, finance director.
Highly
You know,
educated.
he said that the downtown parking fund is going to run a deficit and it's going to burn through all of its reserves. And
But
if
they've already raised the rates once, correct?
they did that before, yes, and now they're talking about doing something very dramatic, which is installing these not like parking meters where you put coins in, but these apps, these kiosks where you will use an app to, like we see in big cities, to put in your license plate, and then you're charged, and then you get a notification that you better put more money in. They also a bigger thing maybe is they want to do that from Delavina to Santa Barbara Street, Gutierrez to Arriaga, basically the entire downtown. You would have to pay to park. You don't have any more of these 90 minutes or 75 minutes free. They also want to say the surface lots, you only get 15 minutes. That's incredible. So we're talking about behind the old Natural Cafe, by the Falding Hotel over there, and the sushi place, and then the Santa Barbara Roasting Company lot. The garages up by all the art places, they want to change that from 75 minutes free to 60 minutes, all to raise about $3 million. And then Keith DeMartini and the city administrator are playing poker here because they're saying, if you don't do that, council, we're going to have to take money from the general fund to subsidize the downtown parking fund, which means our overall deficit is going to go from 7.1 to 10.1 million. So now you're going to be pitting Parks and Recreation, library services, funding against downtown parking, which is going to bring out all the anti-car people who are going to say, you want to drive a car downtown? You should pay for it. But I know from my reporting, people are really upset about this proposal. That doesn't mean the council's not going to do it, but people are upset.
Well,
so why is it that is there been a big drop off because of the pedestrian mall? What do they tie this to?
They're saying two things. They're saying
pedestrian mall? You didn't just say pedestrian mall?
Yeah, I did. I did.
Bicycle mall is what you meant to say.
they're doing two things. They're saying two things. One, COVID-19 hit, so work went away. All the businesses allowed their employees to work remotely.
Right.
And so a low percentage of those have actually returned to offices downtown. So there's fewer people driving in to work. On top of that, they're not actually saying this. This is something I put in my story. But, we have no cars on State Street for a majority of it. So there's probably fewer people also coming downtown to park in the lots. They're putting it all on mostly COVID and COVID disrupting the way people move and work downtown, which has obviously impacted retail as well. But that is the big change, is that they are out of money and they need to figure out a way to come up with more to keep.
Was Jerry, just before you launched?
No, wait. I have a solution. I'm a very solution-oriented guy.
Yeah, I know.
Let's charge for parking for bikes. How about that? And double for electric bikes. I'm saying.
What they should do, now that I think about it, they have this contract they handed to B-Cycle to have all of the parking, the e-bikes all over town, and they just expanded it into the west side and east side neighborhoods. Maybe they should have that fund downtown parking lots.
Isn't the parking fund an enterprise fund?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the problem is that the more you charge, the fewer people use it. And so I could just tell you, I don't pay for parking. I ride my bike downtown, And parking is not a problem for me.
But there's another piece of the parking, which, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, I've only been here 22 years, but wasn't a lot of the free parking and that whole policy nexus be in furtherance of retail and helping
Yes.
merchants downtown,
Yeah.
right? We want to attract customers. So
Yes.
now we're driving them away.
But here's the deal, is that the drop off in parking revenues and the parking lots used, that preceded COVID. I mean, it was going down before COVID. When COVID hit, it accelerated. I think the city's invested way too much in parking, and for the most of the time, a lot of those lots aren't full.
But I mean, I think that the parking kiosks, like all those streets where you can kind of park on the side or in Anacapa or
Right.
Santa Barbara, those are all going to be, you're going to have to pay and put your license plate and you're going to be charged. And so that's going to be a huge disruption. We see this in the big cities, of course, but I don't know. It's going to be a huge change in the way people move around downtown.
Okay,
And just to kind of follow up, I think that having people in Santa Barbara have to use apps is going to be more problematic than it would be in a city like San Francisco
you know what I
or
think?
Chicago. Because I don't know if you've ever tried going to a concert at Arson, like at Campbell Hall at UCSB.
How about just going to the parking kiosk? Exactly.
Right, you're dealing with a parking kiosk there. I would say the people, 80% of the audience is over 70 years old. They struggle mightily.
Easy,
Huh?
easy on the 70-year-olds. Okay, just take it easy.
I'm not trying to let you off the hook.
Okay, look. So I've already solved the parking thing by charging parking for bikes. And we can limit it to electric bikes if you want. I don't mind. What about an app for people who eat at parklets? Okay, you got to eat fast, 15 minutes, you got to pay another 15 minutes. So you want coffee? No, I got to go. My app's about ready to expire. We could do that too. We were fixing a lot of things. All right, Josh, bail. I know you got to bail. I got a couple other things I wanted to bring up. One on the jail health contract, the grand jury report, Nick. There's some unhappiness with the vendor who's been doing that for some good reason, huh?
Once upon a time, the county department of public health provided health services for the jail. That was given to a different contractor. Since 2017. It's been this group called WellPath, and they have been chronically understaffed for a long time for a host of reasons that everybody else is understaffed, blah, blah, blah. But according to the contract, if you're understaffed by a certain amount, 2%, the county should get a break in what it pays. The sheriff is charged with overseeing this contract. There is absolutely no evidence that the sheriff has overseen that aspect of the contract. They don't have any.
Too.
They don't know how many times we've been understaffed, and the grand jury estimate we would have gotten 135,000 off.
Hey Nick, let me. Never mind. I wanted to ask Josh one thing, but go ahead. So he's not basically administering the contract. He's just sending checks.
He's just sending them checks, and as the board of supervisors office and as the administrator's office, the perception is Bill Brown is a really decent human being. He is a charismatic guy in front of a microphone. When there's an emergency, nobody has more presence and gravitas. But administratively, he certainly let a lot of aspects of the jail administration get out ahead of him. And this is what they would say is yet another example.
So this is going to give impetus to sending back administration to the public health department.
There is definitely interest in that. There's a lot of talk about that. The current public health director, a guy named Hamami, who moved in from Detroit about a year ago, when he was the public health director at Wayne County, Michigan, he had direct oversight and administration of 4 jails.
Wait a minute, isn't he the one of the ones getting sued?
Yeah, he is. But let's go back to that later. Okay. he ran 4 jails, so he knows a little something about running a jail. But the jail right now is Bill Brown's purview and is his jurisdiction. And, he isn't going to just give it up because, somebody said that would be a nice idea.
Yeah, man, I don't think we've talked about this lawsuit real quick, in the public health department.
Probably not. There's a lot of skepticism, I guess, is what I've heard about it, but it got filed. A doctor named Mimi Zuhan, who had just started working there about a year ago, and Paige Batson, who was a high-level administrator, and I'm blanking on the name of the third person. They have all sued Dr. Henning Ansor, who is the public health officer, and they sued Hamami, saying that Ansor subjected them to hostile work environment, and they made various allegations about his behavior, coming into a room, shutting the door, so he could say why what somebody said about him was wrong, and that the person felt afraid and had to sort of sneak out. I remember when I first heard about it, I heard, okay, it was a complicated story, is what I heard, and the facts are very complicated. But that will come out in litigation. The most damning allegation was that Dr. Henning Ansor made racist remarks to a nurse, and also sort of made disparaging remarks about Latinos, and told her to give vaccinations without consent of the person receiving them, and approximating the dosage. If all that is accurate, and that is an if, that would be a big deal. But what the facts are, we don't know yet. We'll find out.
All right, more work for lawyers. All right, before we go, we want to wish our best to Elliot and Arlene, great fans of the show and good friends, who celebrated Nick, their 25th year wedding renewal ceremony.
That is very sweet.
This week in their backyard with a crowd of thousands, or at least.
Were you there?
No, I wasn't there, but I know Hap was there, and I know Josh was there, and I think Josh's daughter Megan actually served as flower girl and best bridesmaid or whatever, multiple titles she had. But anyway, really, we do wish the best.
Yeah, both those guys are great.
They really are first rate, although Elliot and I think we're both on the doomer side of things, but be that as it may, best wishes for another 25 years to Elliot and Arlene. All right, brother, what do you got going? Anything coming special for next week?
I'm trying to go visit. We're gonna have a family reunion down in Glendale, or a mini family reunion in Glendale next week.
Okay, all right. And have you gotten to see the early draft of the long-awaited ketamine story yet?
I can't wait. No, I haven't. I'm waiting. You know what? The problem when you read articles before they run is that by the time they run, they're no longer fresh and fun. It's sort of like eating your own cooking,
I know. That's the worst thing about working about any kind of project, because you spend a couple of months with it, and then it still only ran one day in the newspaper, and you're so sick of it by that time, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, what did you see this piece?" And, oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah. I know. All right, Nick Welsh, Josh Molina, thanks very much. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time on Newsmakers.
All right.